Hello everyone. This video I want to talk about the 80-20 rule just for a few minutes and specifically how it relates to architectural drawing with digital design. Basically what the 80-20 rule is, it's something that's applied to many different fields, especially fields where you're designing something or building something or inventing something. And it's important to know, I think you can leverage this to making choices as you work. And basically what it is, it says that 20% of your time, so very small percent of your time, is going to give you the most impact, 80% of the impact of whatever you're working on. And the reverse of that is also true, that 80% of your time is actually going to be spent on something that only has about 20% of the impact. And of course, these are rough numbers. It's just a way of thinking. It's not like this is precisely this percentage. And really that's saying, to put it into more language, is that you're going to work usually at the beginning really quickly. It's going to take you very long, but that quick work is going to define most of the project. But once the boundaries of that project are determined, it takes a really long time to work out all the details. All right, and so that's what this chart up here is basically showing. It's that your concept phase of an architectural project might be quite small, yet it's going to have a big impact on the aesthetics and function of the project. The next phase, schematic design, let's say maybe it takes a little longer, but not too long. It's going to have a pretty big impact. Design development, you're going to start to get into a little bit of details of the buildings, but not too much. There's going to be a lot of changes. You're working with the client and whatnot. It's going to have some impact. And then that's all about 20% of the project, give or take. And then the last 80% of the project, that's construction documentation. That's where you're making all your documents, working on all the details, working with the engineers. Super important work, takes a lot of time. But really, it might not impact the way the building looks that much or even functions. All those decisions are already made. So think of it like this. Like in concept, I have the concept really big. Again, maybe that's different, but everyone knows buildings that have been sketched on a napkin, and that sets the stage for the rest of the project. That could be a few minutes worth of work that captures what the project is in the end. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this was twofold. One is not to realize that when you're in early phases, don't overdraw. They should be quick. Don't worry about too much detail. The detail takes a long time, and that can come at the end. All right. So I often find when any digital tool that a student might be using is that they over detail things too early on. And I'll show another video in conjunction with this that sort of shows that example of how to simplify things as you're working. So I think that's important. Iterate a lot, draw a lot, draw quickly at the beginning phase, and as you go through, draw more and more detail as you sort of know, like, this is the building that I want to have. So the other thing sort of relating to that is I just have down here Revit and Auto as this top line under BIM software, and I have AutoCAD and SketchUp down on the second line, and that could be any other Rhino or any other sort of similar tools to that. Certainly Revit is different than those kinds of tools. And it's my opinion that if you're working quickly, like AutoCAD and particularly SketchUp, which has the word sketch in there. It's not quite like sketching, but that's the intent. It's meant to work quickly. They're great for these early phases. Define 80% of your project really quickly, but they lose their usefulness. Well, they can be used. I've as an oldie, I've used AutoCAD for all of the construction document phase. It's time consuming and it takes a long time. Revit is great for this 80% construction documentation. Yeah, perfect. It makes life definitely easier, maybe even speeds it up, but it's slow in the concept phase. I mean, even just to be like, have to use double lines, have walls, even the default wall concept in Revit, that's still information there. It still has thickness that you might not even want to worry about. And so, don't be afraid to use multiple software. When you're working in the early phase, Sketch. That's not a software. Is my brain's a software. Maybe it is. I don't know. My brain's a software. I sketch. Then you move on to AutoCAD and SketchUp because that's good for sort of these early phases, and then move on to Revit. That would be my general recommendation. I have other reasons for this too in other videos in this class, in this series that we'll see. We'll see other reasons why at certain phases AutoCAD's important. and SketchUp is important sometimes over Revit. I know people are drawn to Revit. And I think the important thing to realize, if you're a student and if you're in class even, you don't often get to this phase of work in the construction documentation. Like even in classes that are about construction documentation, you still don't get to the end point here, right? You might start to be the beginning part of the phase. When you're in studio design courses, you're only operating way down here, concept phase and schematic design phase, and you really need to ask yourself, like, what is the best software? I realize I'm in the 20% of this time, what do I do? And maybe there's hybrids too. You can even think about, like, most of the semester, more good, the first part of the semester, that's all, design stuff. You want to move quickly, but as you start to finalize things and start to work on some of the details and things like that, maybe you move over to Revit, uh, things of that nature, if that is what your choice is. So, I do think it's important. I like to think about this way. I even think about projects this way. What phase am I in? Am I in moving quick, having big impact? I want to use certain tools, or am I really just detailing things out? Uh, and I'm going to take a lot of time, but it's really important, and I'll use other tools for that. So, I find this interesting. One of the, just as a sort of side note to finish this, but I think it sort of summarizes the point. I was once hearing a report about driverless cars. Several years ago, driverless cars were all the big rage. They were going to be here by now, or at least, maybe not everyone, but luxury cars. Tesla for sure was going to have a driverless car by now. It hasn't really happened yet. Now cars can do a lot by themselves. I'm pretty impressed with them. But I think what happened was they moved through the first 20%. They moved through the first 80% of driving really quickly in a short amount of time. And people who were reporting on it projected that out. They said, well, they only have to do 20% of the work left, so it's going to happen really quick. But no, what happens is it slows down. You can't drive a car at 80%, right? That car, like a building, has to be 100%. It's got to, people's lives are at stake, right? And it takes a very long time. And so we still don't have driverless cars. I think we will someday. That's my opinion. I don't know. I'm not an expert in cars. I think it'll be interesting and fascinating and change the way the relationship to buildings and everything else. But it takes a long time to get through those every last little detail, right? So think about where you are. Apply this to life. It applies to so many things other than this. You'll hear it all the time once you know about it. So hopefully that helps. And good luck, and keep making great drawings.